My first participation in the annual World Summit of Satanists in the basement of India. One day, the priest asked me to go with him to the parish so that I could accompany him to the annual meeting at the end of the year. It was December 24, 1985. Toward the middle of the night, the priest told me that we had to get down to business. It was just after Christmas Mass at 11 p.m. Around midnight we went to the local cemetery of Moop. Know that a graveyard is one of the portals to the parallel world of Satan. It was from this cemetery that we were able to travel to the basement of India to attend the annual World Summit of Satanists. The Satanic Kingdom in India is not visible to the human eye. It is a spiritual realm. It is the headquarters of the world government of Lucifer located in the basement of India. After invocations, the priest asked me to find the grave of a male corpse. Once this was done, he made a magical prayer and the person rose from his grave and I was able to talk with him. Then, I lay down in his grave and we told him to keep my body during my trip to India. When I laid in his coffin, my spirit came out of my body, and I landed in India to attend Satanists' World Rally. There were famous footballers, film and song stars, well-known political leaders, fallen angels, superior demons and principalities. Newcomers like me had to be presented to the audience, and it was in this kind of gathering that major events that were to happen in the world in the upcoming year were determined. Thus, the fate of political, sporting and commercial events was decided and determined in advance. This satanic gathering takes place every year from December 24th to 31st. The change of political regime and the results of the elections are decided in advance at these meetings. Sports results and results of championships are also decided and determined in advance during this meeting. Diseases that must emerge on the earth in different regions to torment the inhabitants of various countries are also programmed. In these annual meetings, the fallen angels and principalities plan the wars and the military conflicts that they will provoke in different regions of the earth during the upcoming year. These principalities prepare and plan in advance the traffic accidents, plane crashes, they plan how to sink ships, they program the so-called natural disasters that will hit different regions of the earth, etc. Major and worldwide events, prejudicial to humanity and favorable to the kingdom of darkness, which will happen on the earth during the new year, are decided and programmed in advance by the principalities and fallen angels, while the whole world remain in festivities shouting Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, instead of being in prayer. In these gatherings, the choice of the presidents of different countries of the world is decided. It was during this gathering that I became aware of the change of political regime that would take place in my country, because I saw the fallen angels and principalities decide the arrival of democracy in my country and the devaluation of the CFA franc. In this gathering of Satanists and demons, we also discussed the war in Angola. We decided to send invisible soldiers to continue to help the rebel leader. His army was smaller compared to that of the official government, but he was still progressing because he was helped by demons that were fighting alongside him. I would advise Christians to pray for peace in their country. Many political and military conflicts are decided and programmed in the invisible world to stop the work of God. The kingdom of darkness reserves the right to dominate over a country that has asked for help from the World Bank. The AIDS epidemic was also discussed. I'll use this opportunity to ask children of God not to argue or debate on issues related to sports in general, and football in particular. Let me advise you not to be a fan of a football team. The results of football championships and sports tournaments are decided in the invisible world, in these meetings of Satanists and demons. In these meetings, it was decided that Canada would become a country of labor and that Japan would develop scientifically and technologically. After the meeting, newly arrived initiates like myself were taken to another meeting room where we were to receive instructions, and in this room, there was a statue of Jesus Christ on the cross. In fact, this statue had a human body and fresh red blood oozed from this man on the cross. I do not know if it was a man or a demon. This man on the cross resembled the Jesus depicted on images of Catholic devotion. We have presented this man nailed to the cross as the leader of Christians, the Son of God who is worshipped by the Christians. Our host could not mention the name of Jesus Christ, because it is forbidden to mention the name of Jesus in the world of Satan. Then he incited us to scourge the false Jesus who was on the cross. We were instructed to subject this man on the cross to abuse and insults, and we were urged to flog him, spit on him, and punch him. As a result of this treatment, this man on the cross began bleeding even more. This symbolic act of the new initiates was a blasphemous act that concretized the rejection of Jesus Christ. But the bleeding man on the cross was a superior demon who had assumed the appearance of Jesus. And I understood that the image of the man on the cross in the Catholic Church was not to remind believers of the death of Christ, but rather to make fun of him. Before returning to earth they gave each of us a flying carpet, a book containing 120 magic prayers, a cord with a cross that was a telephone, and a stick that we were supposed to use in spiritual warfare. I was tasked to sacrifice 3,000 people in 20 years, and then we went back to earth. When my master the priest left the city, he entrusted me to a fallen angel known as Master Bomba of Bomba. Grace be with you all who have Jesus Christ as master. My failure in the destruction of a church in Germany. Later, my master Bomba called me to tell me that there was a church in Germany that prayed a lot, and this church disturbed our programs and disrupted our activities in the invisible world. So he entrusted me with the task of extinguishing the fire of their prayers, knowing that I was victorious in all my missions. I took my flying carpet and traveled to Germany, where the church was to see things for myself. Once there, the power that emanated from this church did not even allow me to approach it. I then realized that I was powerless against these believers. I was ashamed of myself. This defeat and this failure were enlightening. I could not understand the kind of power these believers had. I went to report this to my master, the fallen angel. He told me that he too had tried to attack this church, but without success. I was surprised. Even my master the fallen angel was helpless before these believers, but the devil is tireless. He will always try to come back again and again. My first meeting with Freemasons. As I progressed rapidly in magic, my superiors decided to send me to Italy, where I had to meet the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Freemasons, whose name I am withholding. There I had to bathe in blood to increase my powers. It was there that I met several political figures from several states of the world. At this meeting, I was given a pigeon named Nice, which was a demon in the form of a bird. Its job was to report to me everything that went on during my absence, and the content of their meetings. So, to avoid suspicion, I brought other ordinary pigeons, so that nobody could understand what I was doing with this devilish bird. Some people who practice occult arts have cats and birds such as parrots or pigeons. At times I felt a sense of guilt. I needed God. I wanted to join an independent church because I felt a void in me and the need to connect with God and His Son. When I wanted to leave the Catholic Church, the fallen angel Bomba became angry and decided no longer to supervise my initiation and my evolution in red magic. So, to change his disposition, I went to Ivory Coast where the Pope was visiting, to convince him to speak to Bomba. He agreed, but I had to offer 200 people for Bomba to continue my initiation. My meeting with the Queen of Heaven, and my participation in the celebration of the Catholic Madonna. Upon my return from Ivory Coast, I was forced to go directly through the city where the Catholic Madonna's Day was organized. I went where the priests of the 10 Catholic formations of the city of Lauderdale lodged. There I had to meet some bishops and ecclesiastical authorities. I transmitted to them the news and the recommendations of the Pope concerning the multiplication of photos of the Holy Virgin Mary so that everyone attending the celebration can get them at a very low price. Each of the attendees also had to bring along a candle for the ceremony, as Saint Charlemagne and Queen Marguerite had to come down to attend the meeting. These two personalities are superior demons that people call Mary and Jesus. In reality, Mary is already dead. The Bible does not teach us to worship her. He who adores Mary commits the sin of idolatry. He unknowingly invokes a higher demon. For the Queen of Heaven, the Holy Virgin, is a fallen angel called Marie Marguela. That evening, when the ceremony and the Madonna's Day began, I managed to put poison in the water of the city from its source. After people drank this water, I started to catch the spirits of those who were weak in this ceremony and in the city, and as a result, several days later people began to die in many ways so as to avoid suspicion. After capturing the 200 spirits of those who had drunk poisoned water in the city and those who were weak-minded, a mystical plane was sent. I point out that this plane was invisible to the eyes of ordinary people, only the initiates could hear the noises and see this invisible plane. The task of transporting these captive souls was given to a priest of the Catholic mission of the city of Laudama. He was in charge of transporting those souls who were bound in chains to the invisible world. I regret bitterly for putting an end to the lives of these people. After this feast of the Catholic Madonna, on March 6, 1989, some Catholic dignitaries gathered for a seminar in Lubango, a few kilometers from Pointe-Noire. This seminar was convened by the Queen of Heaven. She was accompanied by her son Street Charlemagne, and both coordinated this meeting. The audience included bishops and other church dignitaries, as well as writers from other countries. In this seminar we had to solve the problem of the Legion of Mary, because in this matter there was a conflict between two priests. There was already a bishop who was in charge, but there was another who wanted to seize leadership of the group. The Queen of Heaven simply decided to maintain the bishop who headed the group of the Legion of Mary. After this problem, it was time to examine another case which concerned a bishop who was to be expelled from the clergy, because of secrets of the church that he had disclosed without authorization. The Vatican put him aside and he lost his power as a superior priest. He was then punished by life sickness by the Queen of Heaven. It was paralysis, and he died from it because priests were forbidden to reveal the secrets of the church to laymen. At the end of this meeting, the Queen of Heaven proposed to me to marry a woman from the waters commonly called mermaid or mummy water. She was the daughter of Queen Farida. I accepted her proposal without arguing. So, my new wife the mermaid gave me 2 children. But many years later, my family forced me to marry a human woman. Following this, the mermaid became angry and decided to leave me. She left with the 2 children to the world of waters. The invisible war against the disciples of Jesus Christ. Sometime later, in my destructive work, Satan personally entrusted me with the mission to destroy the spiritual life of a man of God who came to Brazzaville for an evangelistic campaign. It was in August 1992. This Christian crusade was to be held in the Stadium of the Revolution, which is the current Masamba Debate Stadium. A large crowd had gathered singing praises to God. Then they raised their voices to pray. I wanted to stop them by blocking their prayers with my astral hand that I had placed over their hands, but it was a failure because their prayers gave off extraordinary firepower. Later I saw a protocol member heading towards me. I thought he had seen what I had done, so I immediately knocked him down by the power of my invisible kick, just like the wrestlers do. To avoid suspicion, I made myself invisible, then I went to stand on the platform where the evangelist Reinhard Bonk was. I stood in front of him to hit him and destroy him. So I sent magic rays to him to hypnotize him and kill him. I saw the man of God speechless for a few minutes, and when he resumed his speech he asked the assembly to pray for him because he said Satan was in the crusade. And when Christians raised their hands to address prayers to God for this man of God, I felt on my body something like fire devouring me and a strong power thrust me out of the presence of the man of God. And finally, not knowing what to do, I was there dumb, immersed in the most total confusion and breathing in me hatred against the evangelist. It was the second defeat for me in the destruction of the churches. If only Christians knew these things they would not be careless about prayer and the word that keeps them from the devil's maneuvers. After this incident, I had to meet my master Bomba to report to him what had happened. He advised me to persevere. The next day at the same time, I went to the crusade to sow disorder and distraction in the midst of the crowd, and it succeeded perfectly because people were distracted, they could not focus on the word that was preached. That day, there were only 2 cases of healing. Despite my inability to touch the man of God because he was surrounded by flames of fire, I still managed to cause disorder in this campaign, because I influenced the crowd who wanted at all costs to touch the man of God, and this caused disorder. Knowing that I had failed in my mission to kill the man of God, I decided to capture some weak spirits and sacrifice them to Satan in compensation.